fear is justified requires that you invert a whole frame of reference. You have to go to the number one guy, the creator of all that is, and turn what he is upside down so that it's the opposite. So God is now a God of love and a God of hate. That's the turning upside down of a whole frame of reference. Continue.
This procedure is painful in its minor applications.
And I'm going to interrupt. You might say its minor applications are the experiences that you have in personal relationships with each other. Continue.
And genuinely tragic on a wider scale.
And a wider scale meaning an infinite scale that involves the omnipresence and omnipotence of God throughout all of creation. So that this God of love and God of hate is a divided God, and the infinitude of him is governed omnipotently by his capriciousness, his flip-flopping back and forth between loving and hateful. You see? Okay, continue.
Persecution frequently results in an attempt to justify the terrible misperception that God himself persecuted his own Son on behalf of salvation.
There's a tragic situation on a wider scale even than just personal, individual relationships. Continue.
The very words are meaningless. It has been particularly difficult to overcome this because although the error itself is no harder to correct than any other, many have been unwilling to give it up in view of its prominent value as a defense.
Indeed.
In milder forms, a parent says, "This hurts me more than it hurts you," and feels exonerated in beating a child.
Yes.
Can you believe our Father really thinks this way? It is
Stop again. Let that just hang. Can you believe our Father really thinks this way? When you're reading the Course, don't just, I'm not picking on you, let there be pauses between sentences. Let there be a moment to allow what you've just read to register with you fully. Can you believe our Father really thinks this way? Continue.
It is so essential that all such thinking be dispelled that we must be sure that nothing of this kind remains in your mind. I was not punished because you were bad. The wholly benign lesson the atonement teaches is lost if it's tainted with this kind of distortion in any form.
Right, I was not punished because you were bad. I was, and the nature of being was illuminated because you are divine and have forgotten it and deserve the reminder. You deserve to have your divinity illuminated. It was a gift. And you know what? In spite of the upside down thinking that has misinterpreted what happened, what I did and what the Father did worked. Because I'll tell you something, whether you're a Christian or not, you believe that there really was a resurrection. the message has held, no matter how much doubt has been brought into play. It worked. It worked. And if you listen to a tape of this, when you come to that spot, or at the end of this next sentence, turn your tape recorder off and sit with it for a moment. It worked. Okay, continue.
I'm not sure how to answer the question and ask the question, but if it worked, that means the resurrection, your resurrection, was evidence that you can't kill the Son of God. And it was man who crucified you. How?
No, it was man who thought he could crucify me, tried to crucify me, thought he succeeded, and then found out he hadn't done anything at all.
Okay. All right. Because I was wondering if you could resurrect, I'm sorry, the word, resurrection, without having died. I mean, if that was it worked, that's where I was confused. So the resurrection wasn't necessarily the coming back, it was that I never left.
That is correct. But I will tell you also that if it hadn't appeared that I had died like everyone else had always died, then there would have been no evidence that death is not even the last enemy to be overcome. It's not an enemy at all. Okay.
The statement, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord," is a misperception by which one assigns his own evil past to God.
That projection again, yes.
The evil past.
It's justifiable for me to get vengeance because God gets vengeance. And I'm his son. And I take after my Father. And so I'm expressing a divine quality by expressing vengeance just as he did. You see? Continue.
The evil past has nothing to do with God. He did not create it, and he does not maintain it. God does not believe in retribution. His mind does not create that way. He does not hold your evil deeds against you. Is it likely that he would hold them against me? Be very sure that you recognize how utterly impossible this assumption is and how entirely it arises from projection.
Now, he doesn't hold your evil deeds against you because your evil deeds are beliefs, are definitions you have created that have nothing to do with reality. If all they are misperceptions believed to be true perceptions, then you are suffering from something that hasn't occurred, and therefore something which God doesn't hold against you. God doesn't hold against you something you never did, even if you believe you did it. Even if you imagine something that you could do that would appropriately be called a bad deed, you still can't accomplish the bad deed, really. And therefore, there is nothing for God to punish you for. There is nothing for you to punish yourself for, but, and this is where the work of waking up comes in, you have to recognize that you're believing that you're doing something that you can't do, and it has to become clear enough that you're trying to do the impossible and haven't succeeded at it, so that you stop doing it. Because there's behavior associated with your ideas about or concepts about bad deeds. So, behavior will have to change. You can't just say, bad deeds aren't real, and God won't punish me for them. You've got to recognize the fact that it's insanity to believe that you can do something that you cannot in truth do, which is to act out your fear in actions of defense, which are actions of hate. You can't do that I'm sorry. This is me, Paul, saying I'm sorry. You've got to realize that attempting to do that is an insane thing to do. And there has to come an awakening of a desire in you to reflect the Father truly and to express sanity, which requires you to stop acting out insanity, to stop acting out unkind, hateful behavior. Your mind has to be enlivened with truth and enlivened with love, and you have to let that find embodiment in your actions. And as we've been discussing for the past number of weeks, the means of doing that is turning to the altar and not relying upon your best judgments and your best definitions and your best ideas, and asking to be filled with the Father's point of view, which is exactly why we're discussing atonement without sacrifice. And the fact that the fear of God is perhaps the one last hang-up you'll be met with as you turn toward the altar and find a willingness in you to yield unequivocally to God. Question.
So would you say, to sum it up, the point is not so much what you do, but why you do it? Because you have one of two motivations. You either turn to your reasoning, you either get it from the ego, or you get it by turning towards the altar. So you constantly choose between one of two motivators for your behavior.
Those are the only two apparent teachers there are,
Right.
and only one of them is real.
Right. So, like, for example, you can't.
And there's no in-between place.
Right.
There's no place where you can rest in the middle of the two teachers. You can't have time out from God and time out from the ego. Just as we were saying last week, that having a belief insinuates that there's a believer. To say you're going to take time out, you're going to choose between the ego and God, insinuates that there's a chooser.
Well, you could either embody God or you could be insane.
It's you are either the son of God consciously, or you're the son of God unconsciously. But you're not something separate from God that can choose for God or choose for the voice for the ego. You are either the Christ, experiencing ignorance of your Christhood and doing the best you can, or you're the self-same Christ, turning wholeheartedly toward God and asking Him to refresh your mind with the truth about you. But there's only one you, and it's either ignorant of what it is and experiencing everything through an ego frame of reference, or it is conscious of what it is and is the presence of God totally. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you don't have, as we've said before, a safe place to hide and be indecisive, because you don't have a third spot, like a triangle, and on one point is God, on one point is the ego, and on the third point is you, the chooser, who can stay there and make no choice at all, or go down one side of the triangle to the ego, or down the other side of the triangle to God. How can I put this? It's always just one thing. It's always the presence of God, sitting right there, holding the microphone. And the presence of God there, called you, can experience its godness, or it can pretend that it has a separate viewpoint of its own and be confused, but never for a moment has anything but the presence of God been there. So, it can be confusing to talk about you listening to your ego or you listening to the ego, because the very words postulate a separation between the two. The process of awakening is a process of becoming unconfused scratch that. The process of awakening is a process of the one and only Christ there is, the one and only direct expression of God there is, called you, becoming clear about the fact that you are the one and only direct expression of God there is appearing as you, and becoming clear about the fact that the physical, material world and universe is the kingdom of heaven, misperceived. It's about one thing moving from confusion into clarity. Coming home into your right mind, into your sanity. It's helpful, just as it was helpful for there to seem to be crucifixion and resurrection. It's helpful to talk about the voice for truth and the voice for fear, and making a choice between the two. But crucifixion never happened. Ultimately, resurrection never happened, because never for an instant was there an interruption of life. But since everybody at that time experienced death as a fact of life, that fact needed to be addressed in terms that would register and break the fixation on the factualness of death and introduce a new possibility so that everyone was freed up from total commitment to the actuality of death and could let in the possibility of the uninterruptibility, the eternality of the experience of being. It opened the door. And so we talk about making a choice between the voice for fear and the voice for truth, which makes it sound like you're a chooser and the voice for fear is another voice and the voice for truth is God's voice. And all we're really talking about is all of you daring to relax enough to be at peace enough to let down your defenses so that something new can penetrate. And you might say, crack you open wider, like a nut, so that, or a shell, so that more of the infinity of being can register with you, so that you aren't imprisoned by commitments to false beliefs and confusions that cause you to behave in totally erratic and unintelligent ways. Does this make sense?
I'd like to kind of follow up with an example. Let's say in an instant that I catch myself having an ego thought, and I recognize it as a fear-based thought. So at that moment of recognition, am I then thinking sanely because I recognize the insanity?
You have opened the door to sanity. When you recognize that it's a fear-based thought, which you can identify as the ego, then you have the option available to you, because you're conscious enough of it, to ask, Father, what's the real meaning here? What's really going on? What would be a true response, you see? And then you listen. And then when you hear, and there is a sudden shift of perception, then you are no longer confused. Illumination has happened, and for lack of better words, I will say you are more awake, because you are no longer subject to being sucked into believing and committing yourself to that particular ego, fear-based thought. You see?
I think where the slight confusion still exists for me is that it almost appears as if like we're still partially ego and still partially sane. You know, that we're maybe half and half, or however much you want to divide that. And what I heard earlier was that you could either be thinking sanely or insanely. So how could there be that degree of it, I guess? Or is there such a thing?
I could say like Saddam Hussein, but like anyone who believes they have personal assets, you and everyone else let go of what you perceive to be assets slowly. You let go of them reluctantly. The things that you believe serve you, and serve you in terms of keeping you safe, providing you with a defense against the unpredictability of life as you presently perceive it. The willingness to let them go and not have attachment to them, it does not come easily. And so you only let clarity in a little bit at a time. And so, yes, there is an increasing amount of clarity that begins to govern your life, and a slowly diminishing attachment to assets that you believe keep you safe. And you're just going to have to live with the dichotomy. Now, you will find that as you yield more consistently into divine guidance, as you lean into the Father more and more, as you yield into His perspective more and more, there will come a point, like the 100th monkey principle, where enough of your mind is clear that the rest of the illusions will suddenly vanish. In the meantime, be aware that there will appear to be that dichotomy. Don't fuss about it. Don't let the ego tell you that it's proof that what you're believing isn't true, or that you will never be able to relinquish it all. And you persist. And you persist right in the face of whatever the ego throws at you. Like I shared at an earlier time, those who wear contacts and who are nearsighted, who are farsighted, can wear two different contacts, one to see distance and one to see up close, so that one eye is used for everything up close and the other eye is used for seeing everything at a distance. That's sort of the situation you have here. And employ it. Be aware of it, that the dichotomy you can't avoid.